Hey, everybody, welcome, welcome. This is Marnie. I'm here today with my friend Joan E. Murray, and we're going to be talking about sharing your message internationally, modes, methods, and ministry opportunities. Grab a pen or notebook because we're going to be covering how God guides us into sharing our ministries internationally. And that might not be for you. You want to know that. Some of the ways God has used Joan to share messages of influence and to transformation for women around the world. Also, her ministry vision, ways God has supplied resources for that vision, and two examples here for that for you. Also, some blessings you might experience when sharing your message internationally, some challenges you may face when going abroad, how books and podcasting can be a first step toward international ministry, and then also some growth ideas you might consider for 2024 and beyond. Our guest today is Joan E. Murray. She's the founder and CEO of Joan Murray Ministries and Seeds of Hope Worldwide Missions. She's traveled extensively, nationally and internationally, sharing the gospel message. You can learn more about her over at joanmurrayministries.org and also invite her to speak via womenspeakers.com. I'm super excited to welcome Joan here today. Welcome to you.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, it's so fun to be together because usually like we're on summits and we aren't like together. We're like
Yes,
sharing, but we aren't together. So this is super
yes,
fun.
yes.
Yeah, just love your heart. And uh, I didn't prepare you for this question, but how many times do you think you've traveled or how many countries, or do you have kind of a ballpark number for us to have just an idea?
So we have been on 19 international trips around the world, the four
Yeah,
corners of the world,
yeah,
sharing the gospel message and ministering to women and families on
yeah.
these trips. And so north, south, east, and west, we have
That's
been on these trips.
Yeah, that's awesome. And some of you who are joining us, you haven't ever been outside of the US. And so as we go through this conversation here today, listen mostly for the heart of it because every place Joan, for me, every place I've gone internationally is different. There's no two
Yes,
places the same. So you can't really give a cookie cutter like this is how it's going to be for you.
yes, yes, that's true.
But yet there are some things that are pretty consistent as we travel abroad. There's a lot of cultural differences that we just need to be aware of. There's usually interpreters to
Mhm.
work with, a couple of things like that, but also just the heart of having a mindset that includes the world and not just people in our own culture.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
good. So let's go ahead and just start with how did God guide you into an international ministry, and how, like, what do you say for somebody else that's considering it?
So I was at a church where I taught quite a bit. And there was a lady in one of the classes I was teaching, and she said, I would love to invite you to Honduras to come and teach the women. There were several conferences going on in Honduras, and she wanted to plug me into those conferences. She felt like a lot of the ladies, she'd been there many times, and she felt like a lot of the women were not really experiencing the freedom
Yeah.
that we get in our relationship with Christ. So she invited me to go to Honduras to minister at these women events. And I went with her. And while I was there, I ministered at 5 different conferences and really began to pour into the lives of women, telling them how valuable they are to Christ and that, He's marked them for something great in the kingdom. So many of these women in these cultures, they don't know that they're valuable because they're not treated as if they're
Right.
valuable. And so she wanted me to take that message and to talk to them about the purposes that God has birthed them into the earth to fulfill.
So that is, I think, for all of us who've gone internationally, that's how it has worked. At some point, someone invites us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when she invited me, it was first of all a challenge because I had not ministered out of the country
Right.
before, but I felt like the Lord saying, "Go and
Yeah.
make disciples." And so I went. And as a result of that, we've 19 trips later, God has
Yes.
used us. Yes,
Right. And she actually went with you.
she did. Yes, she
Yeah.
introduced me. She went the first 2 times. And
That's
then
so
after
great.
that, this vision was birthed in me to
Right.
continue the
That you
work
can
around
go.
the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember the first time I went internationally and I didn't know who to invite. And I just put a pitch out to the women speakers at womenspeakers.com. And I
Mhm.
said, if God has put Kenya, Africa in your heart, this is something you've been praying about and wanting to go, reach out back to me. And I had this stack of applications back.
Wow.
I'd love to go with. And I was like, God, how am I going to narrow this down? And I thought I'll just read through and I'll just know. And I would be like, oh, that'd be great. Oh, she'd be great. Oh, she'd be wonderful. And I couldn't hardly narrow it down at all. I had the whole stack at the end. I was like, God, how am I going to do this? And so
Oh,
God just helped me to just blindly pick two out of the stack, which was
wow.
so like scary, right? Intimidating. But I remember calling Sharon Herkins first. She's from New York, and I got her on the phone, and I'd known Sharon for years, but I got her on the phone, had never heard her voice. I had only just known her online. I had never heard her voice. And she spoke with an accent. And I said, Sharon, I am calling to see if you want to go with me to Kenya. She's yes, yes, yes. And so I said, tell me about your accent. Where are you from? Oh, I'm from South America, she says. And I said, really? You're from South America? That's awesome. So this
Wow.
white pastor in New York is from South America originally, going to go with me. So I was like, thank you, God, for that. And then I
Yeah.
called the next one, Dr. Cheryl Geisbert Turner. And I'm talking to her for 10 seconds. And she says, well, this will be my seventh trip to Kenya. And God just put these women beside me who knew what they were doing and who could
Mhm.
walk me through that first experience. So I think that's what we want to say first to you is that God will take care of you. If
Yes, he
he's
does.
calling you, just be brave and say yes. Make sure he's calling you, but then just say yes and he's going to take care of you.
Yes, he
Okay.
does.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Talk about the messages that of influence and transformation. Some of the things that come right to mind for you there.
So I think about the cultures that these women are in and the lack of value that they feel. And so the messages have brought healing and transformation to their hearts and lives. Because whenever I'm ministering to women, I really deal with what the Bible says about women. And I especially love what Jesus did when he came on the scene, how he elevated women.
Yeah.
And so I want people to know and women to understand that this is what Jesus does, that he elevated women, he used women in his ministry. And so that they know how valuable they are to him. And so as we share the gospel message, we're reminding them how unique they are, how special they are, how fearfully and wonderfully made they are. And so the messages have brought so much transformation, and you can see it. You know, they will walk in very solemn, and by the time you've spent some time with them, then you
Yes.
begin to see their hearts starting to melt. The tears begin to flow because now the word is going beyond their minds and is really going into their hearts and begin to do a transforming work in them. I love to minister and share the gospel because I can see how God is using the word, not who I am, not what I'm saying, but how his word is so sharp. The scripture says it's sharper than any two-edged sword, and it goes and it cuts away some of the things that people are carrying and that they're burdened with that he never intended for them to carry.
Yeah. So, one of the things to keep in mind as we're sharing internationally is not to, especially if you're coming and going, not to dig into, denominational differences or deep, deep theology, the Greek roots and things like that. We want to keep these messages, like you're talking about, at this transformation level where she
Yes.
can experience God's love for her in a way that she hasn't understood so far and she can apply it to her life today. I know before I went a couple times, the people who had been there before me said, boy, they just love the Bible stories because they often don't hear them. They
Yes.
don't know the story of Esther. They don't know these stories. And so to incorporate these biblical women, Bible women, into our messages is also helpful. Anything else that's coming to mind as far as sharing a message?
And so, exactly what you said, because I'm a Bible teacher, I'm always teaching the stories of the Bible. And
Yeah.
the reason for that is that there's so many lessons that are embedded in those stories that are life transforming. I was thinking about Hagar and teaching on
Yes.
Hagar, how God
Yes.
sees us.
Right.
And so, letting them know that even a slave girl in the Bible, God saw her. and the tremendous things that God did in her life. So the
Yeah.
word is transformation,
Yeah.
and it transformed their lives. And so if we take the word and minister the word just like the word is,
Yeah.
that does more than what our own words can do to make an impact in the hearts and lives of these ladies wherever we
Absolutely.
meet them. Yes.
Yeah, so great, so great. So we're going to talk about resources now because it does cost money actually to travel
Yes.
abroad. It's a lot of money.
Yes.
What has God taught you about trusting Him for resources?
So first of all, to have the gift of faith,
Yeah,
because it really does take a significant amount of money to go to these countries because they don't have the resources. So you're literally going to pour into them. And so trust in him and having the gift of faith that when he's put the vision there, he also will give you the provision. And I have seen it on 19 trips around the world.
yeah,
And so he does give the provision. But we also have to do our part. And part of what we do is we raise funds, but then we also share the visions that God gives us to the many churches that we're in relationships with, to women's group that we minister to people that we know have a heart to see people's lives change. And so we share the vision of what God has given us. And as we share the vision and our passion comes through, then people buy in to
yeah,
what it is that we're trying to do. And what I've discovered over 19 trips is that people really do love to, to, to send you around the world. They may not go, but they will send you to go and make disciples of men and women wherever we find them. And so partnerships are so important. And then there are organizations actually that love to partner with you to be able to help you to go and share the gospel. But relationships with friends and family members, partnership with your churches, partnership with women groups and organizations where you can find them, those people actually help us to fund these trips around the world.
when you are talking to a group for the first time, they don't know you and they've invited you in maybe to share your vision for a trip that you're going to take. How do you phrase it to them? Like I like to say, I have this picture of us in heaven and us standing there and somebody coming up to you and saying, I've been looking for you because it was your role in helping Marnie come to my country or share with me that led me to Christ or grew my I love to help them envision an eternal perspective of what they're doing when they send me.
And mine is similar because I start by talking about how the Lord has called us to go and make
Yeah,
disciples. And that even if you don't feel like you're called to go,
yeah.
you're
And
sending me
send,
or
right?
someone else,
Right.
you're helping to add souls to the kingdom.
Yeah.
And the only thing, the Lord taught me this many years ago, the only thing we can take to heaven with us are the souls of the men and women that we introduce to Christ.
Yeah.
And because we've introduced them to Christ, when we go ye therefore and we add them to the kingdom, when you get to heaven, I say to them, you will stand before Jesus and he's going to say, look behind you, and there'll be a sea of people that you have never met
Not
before,
yet. Yep.
but
Yep.
you're sending us makes that
Right.
difference. And every soul that's added to the kingdom is also added to your names in
Yes.
heaven.
Yeah, I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that
Yes.
right now, my father and mother, that everything that I do is still being attached to their account. My grandparents, who pray for me.
Yes.
It is body life. We are not just a single person going and everybody else isn't part of it.
Yes.
We're all part of this together. So yeah, make it a team effort and
Yes.
bring them on your team and ask if you can be on their team. Yeah, great. So, some blessings maybe that might surprise people about speaking internationally.
Well, number one is that we are so used to ministering here in the US, but there is such a receptivity. I mean, so I would go to an event, like you go to an event here in the US, and you're waiting for the people to show up. And sometimes it takes forever for them to come. So we will tell someone we're starting an event at 11 o'clock, and you get there, and they've been there since 8:30,
Yeah,
9 o'clock, and they are ready for you. And so you get there, and you're scrambling, you're thinking you're on time. You'll get there an hour earlier than you're supposed to be. You're thinking you're on time, and they are already there,
yeah,
ready to receive you. They're hungry,
Mhm.
They will come from distances. They walk.
Yes.
They don't allow themselves to be limited by the distances. They just want to come and hear. And then, especially when you're from the US, there seemed to be just a pull because of who we are, the United States of America. So there's a pull for these people. They desire to come and hear and to receive the deposits we can give them because they're looking for life transformation.
Yeah.
And so you go there and there are crowds waiting, and they're hungry and they're ready and they're willing, and they're not looking at their clocks trying to see when you're going to be done. However long it takes you to minister, they are willing to stay there and to receive. And that is something that is very different in many cases from here.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that just amazed me, we were at a conference in a very rural, very poor area, and a little truck came. A little truck. It had a cab, and then it had a back that was all closed in. And they opened the back door, and they opened a little side door on that truck, and women started pouring out. Countless women were jammed
Cram.
into the
Mhm.
back of that truck. And I was just standing amazed, going, wow. And
Yeah.
then that night, they took all the chairs out of the sanctuary. They had hired mattresses, and the entire sanctuary became a hotel room for hundreds of women where they all just slept exactly next to each other on these mattresses that filled
Mhm.
the floor. They're so committed. They do not require a hotel room. They do not expect great accommodations. They just come hungry, like you say. And it's truly inspirational to be with them. And even after traveling so far and in such difficult situations, they will often stay up and pray into the night,
Yes.
because they just came needing more of God, and just wanting more of Him. So, yeah, so many things we could tell you, exciting things to expect when you go abroad. I think one of my favorite things, depending on what culture in India, everywhere you go, you get a lei around your neck, and I mean, it's just wonderful. They treat you just so beautiful.
Mhm.
People sing to you when you arrive. I mean, it's like crazy. Okay, so but it's not all fun and games.
Yeah.
There are some serious challenges. Speak to those.
And so one of the greatest one is to the challenge of making sure that we're safe, and making sure that as we travel, that we are safe, that we are safe as we travel. And so that's one of the main challenges. Sometimes the people that travel with me, the family members are concerned about their safety and the trip. And then other times you get there and you're dealing with you're dealing with, sometimes the pushback of the enemy, because he does not want you to bring this word, this life transforming word to the hearts and the lives of the women. So you're dealing with those kinds of issues and warfare. So you have to make sure that there's a prayer team, a group of people, your church, that you have a support system in place here in the US that are undergirding you, so that while you're out there on the field ministering, that you're covered and you're bathed in prayer. Another thing, sometimes this, just like our stuff is freezing today, sometimes the systems, that their speaker systems and all of their platform stuff, it doesn't work. And so you have to remember that when the microphones and the systems are not working, you have to be able to project your voices to make sure that the people can hear you, because you're not just ministering to 50, 60 women. There are hundreds sometimes that are crammed in, not only into the churches, but on the outside perimeter. So the challenge of making sure that you can be heard, the challenge of making sure that the people are getting the messages that you want to deliver. Remembering that sometimes the system, the electricity don't work the same way it works here. And so we want to be prepared for all of these things, so that when we go there, that there will be nothing that hinder us from being effective for Christ.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, there's so much. You just said so many things right there. So I think I remember the generator going out pitch black, and then somebody had something, camera, cell phone, or something that could light it up, and then you just keep going.
Yes.
I've told this story so many times, but the pastor comes to me after an hour and says, Mom, could you keep talking because the lunch is not yet ready? And after another hour, could you keep talking? It's not yet ready. And it was like close to 5 o'clock by the time lunch was ready. But God just continued to give me more for them. Yes. And the thing is that when we go, we don't just go by ourselves. We go with the power of the Holy Spirit with us, and all the things he has sown into our lives and brought us through. He can bring any of that up. Plus, the scripture by itself is just so powerful. So that's so beautiful. Let's go back to the safety for a bit, because this one, I always like to say the safest place I could ever be is in the center of God's will.
I say that all the time.
Yeah. Does that mean that nothing bad will ever happen to us? Not necessarily, because Stephen was stoned to death. Jesus was hung on a cross. Most of the disciples were martyred. I mean, it's like, okay, so the safest place according to what? What do we mean by that? What is the safest place? Why would we say it's safe when it is not necessarily physically safe? It's because there's no other place where the protection of God is in more power than when I'm right where he wants me to be. And whatever he allows in that situation, he's going to take me through, either to heaven or whatever the situation is, he'll carry me through. So feedback on just the safest place. Let's address that. And then we'll talk about safety measures in a second here.
Yeah, so that's a great point. And I say that all the time. And we have to be willing truly to lay down our lives for what it is that we believe, for what we're called to do. And so when you go with the understanding of God, you've sent me, I know you've sent me, then the angelic host of heaven, they're going to encamp about you. Yeah. And God's protection is with you. So if you're in the will for your life at that particular moment in time, then that you're serving the Lord. If something happens, nothing takes God by surprise.
Right.
So what a joy it would be that you're serving and you're ministering and you're pouring into lives. And if God chooses to allow something to happen, that you transition into heaven while you're doing what Stephen did, while you're doing what Jesus did, while they were serving, while they were fulfilling their purposes in the earth, they lost their lives. And most people are not yet there, because you really, truly, day by day, moment by moment, we have to lay down our lives, take up our cross, and we really have to follow him.
Yeah. So having just said that, and we totally believe this with our whole hearts, but also we want to be wise in choices. And so one time when we arrived for ministry, the first night, there were gunshots right outside of our hotel. In the morning, we asked if we could be changed to a different location. So you do the best you can. You take the precautions you see possible. Sometimes there's no precaution to take. I remember one time just being in a terrible situation, and God just brought us through. And I've been on both sides of the prayer thing too. Once praying for a missionary friend of mine who was in Brazil at the time, later learning that there was an explosion that happened right around that time, and she was spared. She should have been just totally hurt or even killed, but all that got burned was her big toe, which was crazy. Another time I got back and I had been in a life-threatening situation. A bus was coming right backwards into our vehicle. It just was almost onto my side. It was almost touching the mirror when the bus stopped. We were in their blind spot. There was no way they could see us. And it was just coming right at us. And there was a lady in the United States that was sleeping at that time. God woke her up with my name on her heart. And so when I got back, she said, "What was going on?" I'm like, "Oh my goodness," So just, we can't always be protected in a physical way from everything, or even emotional, relational, whatever. Some bad things are going to happen, but we want to do what we can to be wise about that, and then to trust God fully.
And one of the things that we do often is to connect with the pastors and the leaders and the ladies, women ministry leaders in the country. And so as we're traveling about, we have some of those people with us. Yes. They know the people, they know the culture. And so you have those people with you to help you to navigate through the systems over there.
I remember another time we were in Peru and we were inside and then we came out and while we had been inside, it was a group of us, while we had been inside, the place got surrounded by police officers. There were police patrol all around and we're like, whoa, what's going on? And they said that they had received news that there was going to be a threat on our lives and that they had come to protect us. So, we didn't even know anything was going on. God just knew and God just took care of it. So just wherever he calls you to go, just go there and just be his emissary and he's got your back. So first steps. One of the things you and I both have done a lot is virtual and written works where our words actually go in advance of our physical bodies places.
Yes. And so I was in Guyana early this year and I was at an event and this lady came up to me and she said, I watch you all the time.
Yeah.
How surprising that was.
Yeah.
And so she watches me on the social media platform, on the podcast. She listened to me online. And so it is so vital that we really use these amazing tools that we have been given. They can be used for evil, but boy, can we as believers and as women who want to share the gospel use these tools to make such an impact in the hearts and the lives of people. And so I got a chance to really talk to her on how impacted she was and is by the messages that she's hearing. So the messages get ahead of us, the podcast and the books, all of these wonderful tools that God has given us to help us to share the gospel message, they go before us. And many times people's hearts are open and they're ready to receive the deposits we want to give them because they have read the materials, they've studied the material. And so that podcasting, that social media, Facebook, Instagram, they're such wonderful tools that have been so effective in helping us to share the gospel.
And I don't want you to feel any pressure to do something God isn't calling you to do. But also, once he calls you to do it, don't feel pressure that you have to have a certain number of viewers or a certain number of comments or whatever. Just do what God calls you to do. You have no idea who is seeing these things and what God is doing in hearts. We don't know. Until we get to heaven, we will never know. So just do what he calls you to do and let him take care of the numbers side of things. He's got it. So a couple growth ideas that we could consider for 2024 or beyond.
One of the ones that I'm embracing more and more is the social media platforms and how we can really use them effectively. We're so used to the radio and the TV, but now you have all these other platforms that you can really use to impact more hearts and lives. And just as what you just said about numbers, when I minister, I don't care if it's 5 or if it's 10 or if it's 1,000. I minister with the same love and energy and deliver the word in the same way as if I'm standing in front of thousands of people. Because you know what? That one life that you touch, you don't know the impact for generations to come. And so trying always to use the social media platform. Sometimes my team members have to really push me into some of these platforms because, we're hesitant. We have so many other things going on, preparing messages and all the things we do. So the social media platform, another thing that I'm working on and have been praying about for a very long time is raising up the next generation, finding young people to come alongside of us who have the same passion and the same love for Jesus and love the word and love to share the word and beginning to mentor and train them and equip them to then take the vision and run with it so that you don't die with the vision. You want to make sure that the vision carries on even when you are not here. I teach people all the time that one of the greatest things that we can do is to die empty of everything God gives us in the earth to finish. When I stand before the Lord, I want to have taught every message, written every book, spoken to every woman that God has assigned to me in the earth to fulfill. And I'm always reminded of Jeremiah 1 verse 5, where God says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. God knew us and he had such significant purposes for all of our lives. And he wants us to fulfill those purposes. So I'm pouring into the younger generation. I'm writing as many books as I can write. I'm trying to touch as many lives as I can touch. I'm reminded often that Jesus ministered more one-on-one than he did with groups.
Yeah.
And so we have to be willing and available to minister, even when there's not a big audience before us, but we're
Yes.
willing to minister one-on-one to the
Yes.
hearts and the lives of the people God presents to us.
For sure. Oh, I just love that. I love all of that. And just something you said triggered in my heart. I always say what God has assigned to our account. And that's how I see this. I see that each of us, if you would call your life a bank account, let's just say your life was a bank account, just use that as an analogy. God has already assigned exactly how much money is going to be in that account for your life. But instead of looking at it for money, your life is an account, who you're going to get to talk to, who you get to lead to Christ, who you get to help, free from, deep spiritual bondage, whatever it is that God is calling you to do, he has assigned it to your account already. And all we have to do is walk it out. And the only person I never see in the Bible is the one that lays in bed and says, thanks God for doing this day for me while I rest here in bed. I don't see that person in the Bible. But I do see people who get up and let God do their lives all day, every day, like flow through us to people so that he can minister through our lives and for his glory, but we get to participate, which I just think is the bestest thing ever.
Yes. That he would choose us. What a blessing to be chosen.
Unbelievable,
by
right?
8+ billion people on the planet, and he called our names.
Right. He said,
I've
got specific work for you to do. Yeah, that I've created you to do, and I've got everything you need right here for you. Yeah. Just take space. Yeah. Oh, Joan, this has been so much fun. Thank you, darling.
Thank you for your time.
Well, and you guys want to be sure to go check Joan's website at joanmurrayministries.org. When they get over there, what are they going to find?
They're going to find a lot of resources, all my many books. They're going to find free podcasts. They're going to find tools that's going to help them to grow in their relationship with Christ. And that is always my goal, is for people's lives to be changed. And so they will find a lot of tools that will help them with that.
I didn't realize this until a few weeks ago, but you and I have books by almost the same title. Mine is called Flow Through Vessel, and yours is
Flow Through Me, Lord.
And I did not know that until a couple weeks ago. Wow, that's awesome. So yeah, we're just both emissaries of this concept where we are not supposed to come up with the water of life. We're supposed to be submerged in the water of life and be the straw and let him flow through us. Thanks, darling. Thanks, Joan. So great to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, you guys, for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. See you later.